was only one ship.
One? Are you sure?
Yes. They called it the Pillar of Autumn.
Why was it not destroyed with the rest of their fleet?
It fled as we set fire to their planet, but I followed with all the ships in my command.
When you first saw Halo, were you blinded by its majesty?
Blinded?
Paralyzed? Dumbstruck?
No.
Yet the humans were able to evade your ships, land on the sacred ring, and desecrate it with their filthy footsteps.
So, where do we stand?
Our fighters are mopping up the last of their recon picket now, nothing serious. But I've isolated approach signatures for multiple CCS-class battle groups. Make it 3 capital ships per group. And in about 90 seconds, they'll be all over us.
Well, that's it then. Bring the ship back up to Combat Alert Alpha. I want everyone at their stations.
Everyone, sir?
Everyone. And Cortana. Let's give our old friends a warm welcome.
I've already begun.
Man, we let those dumb bugs out to the middle of nowhere to keep them from getting their filthy claws on Earth. But we stumbled onto something that's so hot for that they're scrambling over each other to get it. Well, I don't care if it's God's own anti-son of a bitch machine or a giant hula hoop. We're not gonna let them have it. What we will let them have is a belly full of lead and a pool of their own blood to drown in. Am I right, Marines?
Ooh. Alright, I'm a little overdue. Hey people, Mark here, and welcome to another ship breakdown. It has been some time since I said that. I sound like a cartoon character, tuber voice engaged. In short, to quote Kendrick, as I will many times this coming year, I've been going through something, as has Halo in the past couple months, but I ain't touching that right now. If you want to see that video for whatever reason, care about me, I don't know, go check it up in the top right. But no matter how much something I go through, today's ship will have me beat, in the fiction at least, because today we're going over one of the most easily recognizable and pivotal ships in all of Halo, if not the most. It's the very first ship we see, and it would inform the designs and in-universe lore of every single one that follows. The Halcyon-Class Light Cruiser. Also, quick aside, I made the animation in the beginning. The credits for all the models are in the description. However, the Halcyon models and some of the renders in the video are all courtesy of the wonderful folks at Chokepoint Games, who, if you don't know, are responsible for Sins of the Prophets, a total conversion mod for Sins of a Solar Empire where you build and command UNSC or Covenant ships. It's rad. If you like my videos, you should definitely check it out in the description. I'm not affiliated with them beyond loving their game and having talked to them a bit, but I also wanted to shout out Sins of the Prophets 2, which has been in development for a while, and Home Fleet, which is a total conversion mod for Homeworld 3, which I'm super excited for. There's a little teaser trailer out now. You can find it in the top right corner. I suck at RTS games, but once Home Fleet is out, I may even be streaming it here or over on Twitch, so subscribe and follow. And while I'm here, go check out Halo Raptor's latest trailer in the top right. The community is carrying Halo so hard right now. All right, on with the video. At the height of the ever-shifting landscape of the human insurrection, the Halcyon-Class Light Cruiser was designed by Reyes-McLees of Reyes-McLees Shipyards, with 50 manufactured in total. Like its only known cruiser predecessor, the Valiant-class Super Heavy, the Halcyon has an oblong shape often likened to a brick, and this would carry on to every other UNSC cruiser design that followed. Manufactured in space, much like their descendant pictured here, the Autumn-class Heavy Cruiser, the The Halcyon-Class is not rated for atmosphere. It cannot hover like frigates have been seen to do using gravitic technology, and as such, the Halcyon requires detachable R7 thrust couplings to land and launch from the surface of planets. First commissioned in 2510, the ship measured in at 1,170.63 meters long, 352.27 meters wide, and 414.43 meters tall. It weighed 11 million tons and required a crew of 1,000 personnel to operate, highlighting the inefficiencies of UNSC ships in comparison to their Covenant equivalents, with the Covenant's light cruiser, the Xanar pattern, requiring a crew of 9. A network of lifts, stairs, and magrail platforms allow for quick travel within the ship, like we see on the Spirit of Fire in the opening cutscene of Halo Wars 2. 3 Mark II Hanley-Messer deuterium fusion reactors powered the ship and provided propulsion, with assistance from 4 compact auxiliary fusion rockets, which, while providing high thrust, were notorious for their inefficiency. The ship possessed 4 docking bays, capable of carrying cargo and ground, air, and spacecraft, as well as a drop bay for the deployment of Pelicans and the firing of Soev ODST drop pods. Of the 50 Halcyon-class cruisers manufactured, only the first 11 were created with a particular design feature that would prove to be the ship's greatest strength and greatest shortcoming, that being the unique frame construction known most commonly as the honeycomb superstructure. Utilizing internal cross bracings and hexagonal titanium A honeycomb corridors and segments, the Halcyons were built in such a fashion that they could, even upon losing 90% of all armor and suffering breaches to every compartment, still remain functional. While on the Pillar of Autumn, Master Chief encountered cross beams in the center of some corridors, these being the massive cross bracings of the honeycomb structure. These individual sections could be closed off with retractable containment bulkheads, and if the need arose, they could individually be depressurized and vented of oxygen, a scourge to any who would board these cruisers. Surrounding the bulk of the inhabited interior and engines was an octagonal shell of spaced titanium A plating, which was standard formulation for armor on UNSC ships. And while these design features gave the Halcyon class an incredible tolerance for damage, the unbelievable mass and cost of such a structure, in addition to the inefficient and slow engines and poor armament, the cruisers developed the reputation for being, in the words of Captain Jacob Keyes, slow, ineffectual in combat, the laughing stock of the fleet. The shortcomings would prove to outweigh the benefits of their continued use in the Navy, and shortly after their debut in 2510, they would all be decommissioned and replaced by the far more effective and prevalent Marathon-class heavy cruiser. Now, this is just a note, this isn't like in the script I wrote or anything, but that means these things suck so bad that they were being beat by stolen warships of whatever classes by insurrectionists, because the Covenant wasn't even around yet. So, assuming that the Insurrection wouldn't be able to steal destroyers and cruisers very often, that's a pretty poor display, I'm gonna be honest. The Halcyons were placed into long-term storage on Europa and designated to be scrapped, having outlived their admittedly low usefulness to be stripped and used for something better. Or that was the plan, anyway.
Humans, your destruction is the will of the gods, and we are their instrument.
When the Covenant arrived, it was made evident immediately that the current UNSC Navy would not be enough to halt the advance of the alien onslaught, and they required an excess of all hands on deck. As the war raged on, the Navy's older and less effective ships would receive periodic upgrades and refits, the Halcyon being no exception. In addition to the various alterations to its armament, which we'll touch on later, a few surviving Halcyons would be authorized for dramatic overhauls in a total refit. While it's not directly specified, there are 2 visually distinct iterations of the Halcyon class. I personally take the old Combat Evolved design to be the original chassis of the Halcyon-Class Light Cruiser, and the Halo Reach version to be, with these more cut-out sections, to be the look of the refit chassis for the new Halcyon. The most well-known refits were, of course, those applied to the UNSC Pillar of Autumn, and the new designs would have such an effect on critical moments in the Human Covenant War that it would lead to an entire class of cruisers based solely upon them. Addressing the famous overmassed nature of the Halcyon, new experimental formulations of titanium A would be utilized in the armor of the ship, reducing the mass and freeing up internal volume, shaving its total mass down from 11 million to 9 million, which would be used to increase the hangar and drop pod space at the expense of long-term accommodations. The reactors were also overhauled, with the inclusion of new highly efficient laser-induced ion cooling systems and an increased maximum output of up to 300% power for short periods. The ship's sensor suite was also upgraded with a new multi-purpose scan array that contained tactical sensors and electronic eavesdropping implements, new underslung planetary survey sensors and probe launchers, and the long 4-mast antenna we see that has new slipspace navigation sensors, which, if I had to guess, probably there to help with the new slipspace drive, because the old sensors and navigation implements would probably not be very good comparatively, because they're 40 years old at that point, as well as new hardened BattleNet transponders. The BattleNet is basically just the UNSC's, like, what would you call it? It's just their radio network that they use to stay communicated with each other. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. The complement for the original Halcyon was never stated, but the upgraded Pillar of Autumn version is capable of holding 800 Marines, 400 ODSTs, 2 D-96 Albatross cargo dropships, 12 D-77 Pelican dropships, 5 GATL-1 Longsword fighter bombers, 60 M12 Warthog all-terrain vehicles, 20 M808 Scorpion tanks, and 216 M8823 Soev drop pods. But the most significant improvements would be to the Halcyon's most enduring issue, its horrible armament. The armament of the original Halcyon-Class Light Cruiser was exactly as the class suggests. It was light, and to the Covenant, and even to the human insurrectionists it first encountered, this made the ship light work for the competent opposing captains. The primary armament was the ship's MAC cannon, of course, which there are no details about. All we know is it was a MAC cannon, and it had a very slow reload speed. Other than that, the ship had 180 Archer missiles, not Archer missile pods, which contained 20 Archer missiles each, but just 180 Archer missiles in total. And finally, the ship had 4 Shiva-class nuclear missiles, which are guided and can be interfaced with by a shipboard AI, or deployed via longsword if needed. And that's it. No autocannons, no anti-ship guns at all besides the MAC, which, as an early magnetic accelerator cannon, it would have had an extremely slow fire rate and loading speed, no point defense to speak of, meaning the Halcyon would have had to be defended by some other ship or fighters in order to be not obliterated by enemy fighters or bombers or missiles, unless the Archer missiles have some kind of flak warhead or something. I don't know. This thing's armament sucked Mongo ass. That is, as I said, until the Refits mid-human Covenant war, which we'll touch on when we talk about the Pillar of Autumn herself. As for known named ships of this line, the UNSC Halcyon was the lead ship of the class. Being the first of them all, we can assume that it was built with the signature honeycomb structure, and that is all we know about it. The UNSC Constantinople, I probably said that right. Listen, I know I've heard people say Constantinople, whatever. I'm gonna get a comment that's like, it's pronounced Constantinople, actually. The UNSC Constantinople served in Battle Group X-Ray under Vice Admiral Preston Cole, and was one of several ships lost in the first ever large-scale naval engagement with the Covenant. 40 human warships versus 1 Covenant superdestroyer. The UNSC Dawn Under Heaven is the sister ship of the Pillar of Autumn, and that is literally all we know about it. There is one dev at Bungie that mentioned this ship once, said that the backstory was very interesting, but nothing was ever came to fruition for that. So, you know, it lost to time. The UNSC Toulouse. I'm actually going to Google that one. The UNSC Toulouse is a Halcyon class that took part in some engagement somewhere in the galaxy over a Forerunner installation that looks like Requiem but may or may not be. It's this one from the Halo Warfleet cover art. That's literally all we know about it. And considering in this image it is outnumbered 4-1 by Ket pattern battle cruisers, it is probably dead. The UNSC Persian Gate took part in the Battle of Alva Corvi II, one of the earliest planetary invasions initiated by the Covenant. Shortly after the ship hosted the funeral of Sam 034, the first Spartan casualty of the war, Blue Team would be deployed 3 days later. The Spartans and Captain Whitaker of the United Rebel Front would join forces to battle the Covenant, and they would fight on the ground until naval engagement was deemed a lost cause. Upon extracting, Whitaker and his men were refused transport by the UNSC, much to the anger of John 117, who had just fought alongside those guys. In the following hours, Whitaker would be slain by an elite, Alpha Corvi II would be glassed, and all United Rebel Front forces on the planet would be eliminated. Typical UNSC. The UNSC Roman Blue we have talked about a few times in other videos, notably the Sonaris pattern heavy destroyer breakdown found up in the top right. Essentially though, This was the ship captain. Oh yes, like and subscribe, by the way. The long and short of it, though, is that the ship in 2530 was being captained by a young Terrence Hood, and while manning the vessel, he would fail to retrieve the Spirit of Fire's log buoy in favor of seeking revenge on a Sonaris pattern destroyer, a ship the Roman Blue had no hope of defeating on its own. Hood sees this as his greatest military failure, and the loss of the UNSC Spirit of Fire weighs heavily upon his shoulders to this day. The Roman Blue would leave and re-enter service after repairs, and it was destroyed in an unknown engagement in the Ectanus 45 system. There, its remains would be discovered by salvager Ryan Forge, daughter of John Forge, and subsequently its wreckage was further destroyed by an unknown assailant, likely Oni, in an effort to prevent heavy UNSC munitions from entering the black market. And of course, the Pillar of Autumn. Possibly the most recognizable name and face of the entire UNSC fleet. Really, only close competition would be the Infinity and the Forward Unto Dawn. The Autumn was one of the lucky 11 Halcyons initially slated for construction with a honeycomb superstructure, and after 3 years in construction, it was launched from the Reyes-McLees shipyards orbiting Mars in December 1st, 2510. We don't really know what roles it might have played during the Insurrection, but the earliest deployment we know of was in 2531. With the support of Belfast, Texas, and Armstrong, all UNSC warships of unknown class, the Autumn engaged 2 Ket-pattern battlecruisers in orbit of the planet Arcadia, and the battle group was actually able to destroy one of the 2 cruisers before it and its companion were able to badly damage the Autumn and Armstrong and completely destroy the Texas and Belfast. The surviving battlecruiser was able to deploy Covenant ground forces to Arcadia, targeting Perth City, capital of the planet. Covenant forces were ruthless in their assault, but were eventually met with some resistance in the form of the newly arrived UNSC Spirit of Fire. UNSC forces from the Spirit were able to impede the assault to a limited degree, rescuing some portion of Arcadia's population. After linking up with Spartan Team Omega, the Spirit of Fire's forces would call upon the Pillar of Autumn to lend them at least a couple platoons of prototype M145D Rhinos, experimental UNSC tanks armed with plasma cannons. The Pillar of Autumn's presence and involvement in the battle played a pivotal role in the Battle of Arcadia, which resulted in one of the UNSC's earliest tactical victories, even repelling the Covenant ground assault entirely. That's rare. Following the battle, the UNSC Pillar of Autumn and all other Halcyon-Class Light Cruisers would be decommissioned and replaced by the far more popular and effective Marathon-class heavy cruiser, which I also did a breakdown on that you can find up in the top right. The Marathon would go on to become the UNSC's premier cruiser and flagship, but as the war worsened, so did the need for warships, unlike the ability to produce warships, which would drastically decrease. Within the first 5 years of the war, at my probably inaccurate count, the Covenant had lost a total of 27 ships in engagements that we know about. There's tons that are mentioned that we just have no numbers for. The UNSC, comparatively, had lost 96 ships. This discrepancy would only increase as the war went on, the Covenant cutting through swaths of human space, destroying ships and shipyards alike, not only reducing the Navy's fighting force and personnel, but hamstringing their ability to manufacture more, while the Covenant's far more efficient and effective assembly forges stayed tucked deep into Covenant-controlled space, thousands of light years away from any humans likely to do them any harm. The UNSC would pull out all the stops in an attempt to halt the Covenant's brutal advance. Several classes of ship were pulled out of retirement, like the Hillsborough-class destroyer, the Mako-class corvette, Mako whatever, and the Halcyon-class light cruiser. But in the face of plasma lances, able to bifurcate entire carriers, plasma cannons that melted off the entire armament of a frigate in a few shots, nigh impenetrable armor and energy shields, far more advanced maneuvering drives and slipspace capabilities, the expensive honeycomb structure of the few Halcyons that had it would prove priceless, the survival chances of most UNSC ships against a Covenant one being slim to none on a very good day. And toward the end of the war, a desperate attempt to end it immediately would bring the Halcyon class to its peak physique, Operation Red Flag. Red Flag was something of a Hail Mary attempt to end the war as soon as possible, the plan calling for a team of Spartans assembled to hijack a Covenant vessel with the goal of infiltrating the Covenant's capital installation, High Charity. Once there, the Spartans were supposed to capture one of the Covenant's hierarchs and force the hegemony to come to the bargaining table. The operation never took place, but in preparation for it, the Pillar of Autumn was subject to further refits that even other refit Halcyons never were. For Operation Red Flag, the Pillar of Autumn's MAC would be replaced by a Mark II 56A2D4 Light MAC. This cannon runs 2/3 of the ship's entire length and utilizes specially crafted magnetic field recyclers that, when combined with new booster capacitors, allowed the MAC to burst fire 3 rounds in succession. Light coil MACs like this one were, as all MACs, gigantic coil guns that work by magnets pulling a slug in sequence down a barrel to accelerate it and propel it forward with mind-boggling force. The term light coil refers to both the size of the barrel and of the slugs that would fit within, which is not specified. The store of Archer missiles was also increased exponentially, with the amount of Archer missile pods increasing to 20, then 32, adding up to 768 Archer missiles in total. Finally addressing the lack of a secondary armament, the refits graced this new Halcyon with 4 Mark 33 Spitfire naval coil gun batteries and 4 Sentry autocannons. Now, the Halcyon had a way other than missiles alone to fire at enemy ships that happen to be anywhere other than directly in front of them. It's kind of important to be able to shoot at an enemy in a 3D maneuvering space in more than just one direction. And unlike missiles, concentrated fire from automatic coil guns within range cannot be intercepted by point defense or fighters, forcing ships to rely on their armor or energy shielding. Speaking of point defense, this new Halcyon now had 18 M910 Rampart point defense guns, the UNSC's favorite point defense guns, finally giving them some amount of protection from the aforementioned missiles, bombers, boarding, and fighter craft. Take a look at how much the Pillar of Autumn still gets boarded. Imagine previous Halcyon-Class Cruisers that didn't have any way to shoot down boarding craft before they hit. Beyond its armament, the Autumn's armor was upgraded to the latest titanium A ablative plating, saving it tons of mass and volume with no loss in armor rating. Even further improved hydraulic reinforcements activated during emergencies to supplement them. The bridge was fully renovated to an Omega pattern bridge, whatever that means, but included in that package was a Tier 3 data core, which meant the Pillar of Autumn could now house a smart AI like Cortana within its systems, which means that the old Halcyons not only completely sucked from a hardware standpoint, they were being operated by human beings without any AI help. Well, that's not true. There was probably dumb AIs, but still. The battle for Reach, which was so catastrophic it's only known as the Fall of Reach, led to the cancellation of Operation Red Flag, and saw the end of nearly every human ship that took part. After taking part in the battle in orbit, the Autumn was heavily damaged and needed to land at the Azad shipyard to replace a mortally wounded reactor. After the retrieval of a critically important package, Cortana, the ship would flee the system, outmaneuvering Thelvadimy's naval forces and jumping to slipspace, emerging to what Captain Keyes assumed was a random location in space, as per the Cole Protocol. Cortana had other plans, instead guiding the ship to the Soel system, using coordinates from a previously identified Forerunner artifact. Thelvadimy had acquired the trajectory of the Autumn's jump and pursued, arriving before the Autumn due to their faster FTL technology. Upon emerging from slipspace, both the human and Covenant laid eyes upon a massive planet-sized megastructure, and the rest is history. I guess you could say that after this, combat evolved. While, as we should all know by now, the Pillar of Autumn's final resting place was Installation 04, after an intentional reactor overload by Master Chief and Cortana. But that wasn't the end of the Autumn's legacy. The ship's design changes and impact at such a critical juncture of the war would lead, the ever-sentimental humans to create a new class of cruiser in her honor. Following the end of the Human Covenant War, humanity found itself with unprecedented technological advancements after reverse engineering both Covenant and Forerunner technology, both of which they would utilize in the creation of the Autumn-class heavy cruiser, which is one of the most advanced ships the UNSC has ever fielded. You can find an old breakdown of mine on the cruiser in the top right. Go click that. It's from, it's from 2023. 2 years ago. Jesus. Anyway, Halo Studios, just use that ship again. You can use that one. You don't need to make a new ship every single game. You could just, I know Bungie did that, but you can bring back old ships. That's alright. I would like to see the ships in the lore appear in the lore. I think it'd be cool. I didn't mean to sound snarky. Why am I snarking? Anywho, that is the UNSC Halcyon-Class Light Cruiser. What do you think? Is it cool, boring, interesting, played out? Let me know. I've been gone for some time, but I've been working on a lot. I've got plenty of videos coming up this year on Mark the Crawler. I've got a couple other projects that I'm keeping secret in the works. And if I could find out a way to be consistent with it, this channel will now be hosting Helldivers content, as you probably saw by the last video. I love Helldivers. I've been playing the shit out of it for the past year. Finally got around to taking Starfield out of the channel art, that shit-ass game. Alright, that's all I got. Yeah, bye-bye. Forgot how I end these. Peace.